So without further ado, let's get excited for the Power Talk. Bria Farmer is a mompreneur with 3 kids under 6. She's also been recently named as GeekWire's Geek of the Week, and she founded Lions and Tigers, which is a marketing, operations, and strategy consultancy to empower professionals and enable clients through hybrid engagements so that there can be more flexibility in the future of work. So let's welcome Bria.
Thank you, Ellie. So nice to see everyone. I am coming out of maternity leave for this conversation today because we're asking a question that's on so many minds, especially here in the cloud jobs conversation today. And that is, what if work worked for all of us? Because sometimes it doesn't. And some of us have felt that way, perhaps in our workplaces too. You know, there's been times as underrepresented communities, we have felt and seen actions that have made us feel excluded. I know that I've seen or felt at times like someone is saying to me, I can't come in, or you're not like us, or you're not a culture fit, you aren't credible, I don't want to accommodate your needs. And what I hear in those moments, what I feel in those moments is that I'm not worthy. Like I'm being excluded from a community I want to be a part of. And for me, I faced my very own first professional low about 5 years ago. And I was so lucky because I caught it on film. You'll have to picture this with me. Picture that I'm standing in a public restroom. I am taking a bathroom selfie of myself here, and imagine I'm wearing this black dress, lace down to my knees. I have on flats. I'm carrying my best briefcase, and I've got this coat and a big scarf, and I'm doing my very best not pregnant gal impression. But the reality was I was covering up a big old belly, and I was about to go into a job interview. And I had taken this bathroom selfie to send to my husband to try to garner some confidence going into this job interview because I had just been laid off from a startup, 7 months pregnant. And I needed this job because I didn't have health benefits for my kid and my delivery that was about to come. And I sat across from a gentleman who interviewed me, and he told me his hiring process takes on average about 4 months. And in that moment, in that picture, I became a statistic. And I'm not alone. We've heard all day, all morning about some of the statistics that are hitting our women in our workforce. Many of you have seen the jobs report from just in December, where Americans lost 140,000 jobs. All of them were women. And the majority of them were women of color. We have terms now like a she session. What the hell is that? I don't want that. I don't want to hear that again. I don't even know what that is. I don't like it. No. What we know is that we're being set back a decade or more in our progress. And it's caused me to step back and ask these questions about our workplaces, about what we've been taught. You know, who built this? Who was it built for? What was it built to do? And if we're to face a true reality here is that our tech workforce was built for a very specific kind of worker. He has no family obligations. You know, I'm a mother to 3. I'm on maternity leave. I've got an 8-week-old baby. I was up twice last night feeding her. I can't do 7 a.m. breakfast meetings. He's able to travel for work whenever he needs and go and see opportunities that I can't go and pursue, especially with COVID, but it's not a risk we're willing to take. He's extrinsically motivated. He's profit driven. He's white. And this has created a power dynamic in our workplaces, people who have jobs, access, privilege, and those of us that want it or need it. And so when I see statistics like what came out of Accenture and Girls Who Code, who found that half of young women drop out of tech jobs by the age of 35, it does not surprise me. It is not a coincidence. Many of us are caretakers. And the primary reason cited in that study is non-inclusive company culture. And do you know what I hear in that answer? I hear, you aren't worthy and I won't accommodate you. And so it's possible that we're at a breaking point, but what I think we're at is at a tipping point. And if we're to look at the incredible trends that 2020 has brought to us and what 2021 suggests, there are 5 things that suggest to me that this tipping point is really coming for all of us. The first trend is, of course, women leaving the market in record numbers. We're seeing this, we're hearing this all day today. I had a friend, Carrie, say to me, she's a published author, a thought leader on interior design. She had to drop out of the workforce so that she could care for her 2 young kids. And she said to me, Bria, I need you to keep working because I can't. And it stunned me. And so this childcare crisis that we're all facing is hitting women exponentially harder. The second trend that is long overdue is following the reckoning, the social justice reckoning we had in 2020, that is now calling brands to the mat. What are we all doing around the topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion? And there's now spend. There are line items and there are initiatives across organizations across the world focused on inclusive hiring, on inclusive talent, on equity and inclusion in our workplaces. And this is a trend that's really encouraging. The third trend, as a result of 1 and 2, is that now brands and organizations are having to have responsibility over the mental health and wellness of their workers. Certainly, my mom and my grandma would never have had workplace health discussions like we're having today. The fourth trend is a term coined by Microsoft called tech intensity. And it's a term that relates to an organization's rate of technology adoption, along with its ability to build its own digital capability. And so I think of it as human potential and tech potential equals capacity. Better tech, better workers, more capacity. And the last trend, the fifth trend that really, revs me up is the freelancer revolution underway. And we see micro entrepreneurs, freelancers, solo entrepreneurs, gig workers, whatever you want to call them. They're raising in epic numbers, so much so that by 2027, it's predicted that more than half of Americans will be working in a freelance capacity, more than half of our workforce. And so these 5 trends mean that the power dynamic is shifting. And the great truth is that organizations still need good, talented, productive people to get the work done. And if women and underrepresented populations are unavailable in this traditional workforce as we've seen it today, we have to create new paths. We have to innovate new ways. And so my challenge to all of the decision makers that are in the room today is to think of this not as accommodation, but instead to think of it as a strategic advantage. Okay, so do you want to know what I did after the bathroom selfie? I didn't get that job, and it probably was for the best. I don't think we were probably a culture fit. I was able to go and I found a few part-time consulting projects. I self-funded my own maternity leave because we didn't have a social safety net here in Washington at that time. And I freelance consulted for a few years when my kids were really young and really needed me to have that kind of flexibility. I wanted to work just a little bit less than 40 hours and I couldn't find those jobs. And so after that, I realized that there was a hole in the market for highly skilled workers like me to come in and contribute. And so in 2020, my firm, Lions and Tigers, when American unemployment reached 15%, we were able to broker hundreds of part-time projects for workers across the country. And in the last 2 years, we've only been open for 2 years, we've been able to give more than $8 million of economic opportunity to this community, and they earned it. And so you might know Lions and Tigers, you're probably thinking about that name. It's a courage brand. And we bring highly skilled, talented workers into tech and enterprise spaces for these flexible and fractional engagements because it's one of the most inclusive ways of working. And we're on this mission to make the working world a more empathetic and authentic place for everyone. And so we're growing at a pretty good clip as a result of that. And so my mission today is not to encourage everyone to go freelance. That's not the right thing for everybody. But instead, it's to encourage this idea of access. And it's a word that we're hearing over and over and over today. And I'm so excited that we might have 100 job placements in our recruitment lounge amongst this community today. It's amazing. And so my call is to decision makers, those of us among us who have access and power and privilege, to think about how we use that. And my encouragement is that you think about a two-pronged approach. First, you got to love the one you're with. You got to make sure that these employees are cared for through, of course, these equity and inclusion programs, through flexible work policies. Those are the things that will keep women in the workforce. The second is to consider an inclusive, flexible worker strategy, because that's the way that the world is going, and you need both. And really, what an opportunity we have. And we've talked so much about the power of women, and we know that if we harness that power, that we have the opportunity to add $5.87 trillion to our global stock market in the next 10 years. And if we think about, if we forecast out what this could look like in 10 years from now, it's this power dynamic shifts from profit-driven to people-driven. We heard from Jennifer talking about skilling, and certainly I agree, because I think that the future looks like skills as currency. You start to see it on LinkedIn already. At the bottom of your profile, you're seeing now endorsements for skills. And what if that got switched to the top of your profile, where our relationships with our skills, the mastery that we bring, is more important necessarily than the brands that we're associated with? And you see this skilling and training become so much more accessible. So you've got, Udemy and lynda.com and LinkedIn Learning, so many platforms dedicated to quick and specific kinds of training that people can take so that they become portable. They become the players. And I was really encouraged. There's a very recent study that just came out of Harvard Business School and Boston Consulting Group, where they interviewed 700 enterprise leaders. And one of the things that I pulled out of that study was that more than 3/4 of those leaders forecasted that their workforce would be more fluid, that they would be shifting between multiple employees and freelancers up and down at a higher frequency. So leaders are catching on to this swift talent trend too. And so my message to you is to choose your own beautiful path, because there is no one right way to do this. And so how do we get there? That bathroom selfie was the start of the confidence journey that I had to go on, where I had to realize my worth. And I had to adopt the mantra, and I hope that you all do today as well, that organizations should feel lucky to have us. For 10 hours a week or 40 hours a week, the amount that we can accomplish in that time is powerful. And so there's 2 steps to doing that, to realizing that worth. And the first is that we need to stand strong and true with what we need in our lives, the deal, the kind of constraints that we have, what we value to put us in our highest and best use and give service, and honor that by communicating it to the folks across the table from us. And if they don't agree, then they're not your people. And then second, we need to join into a community like Women in Cloud, and asking in a giving community, because we shift that power from he to we. And I will leave you with one last thought. It was a quote that I heard from the beautiful Amanda Gorman, who was a stunning poet at last week's presidential inauguration. And part of her poem, of course, applies to democracy, but it also applies to the future of work. And what she said is that while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. And I believe that this community can collectively make work work for all of us. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, Bria. I was clutching my pearls and I was watching the chat, and I know so many people were having the same reaction. I think of you in that bathroom taking that selfie, And no joke, my thought was like, that must be what Tom Brady felt like when he was a 6th round draft pick, and you're just like he is. So I love seeing people do well by doing good. You didn't just solve the problem for yourself, but you've created a whole new path and avenue for so many others. So thank you so much for doing that and for sharing your story. I just continue to be inspired by you. Thank you, Bria.
Thanks, Ellie.